The spring snowmelt had turned Willow Creek from a peaceful mountain stream into a raging torrent that carved new channels through the Colorado Territory landscape. As 15-year-old Sam McKenna checked his fish traps on that fateful May morning in 1885. Living alone in a small cabin inherited from his late uncle, Sam had learned to survive through careful observation of nature's moods and rhythms. But nothing had prepared him for what he would witness near the bend where the creek narrowed between granite boulders. The sound of shouting above the creek's roar made Sam look upstream, where he saw a man clinging desperately to a fallen tree that was being swept toward the rapids. The stranger appeared to be well-dressed despite his waterlogged condition, and his struggles were weakening visibly as the cold mountain water sapped his strength and the current threatened to tear him loose from his precarious hold. Sam's first instinct was self-preservation. He was a slight 15-year-old who had learned that survival meant avoiding unnecessary risks, especially when dealing with strangers who might bring unknown dangers into his carefully ordered life. But as he watched the man's grip failing, his conscience overwhelmed his caution. Without stopping to consider the consequences, Sam grabbed the rope he used for hauling traps and waded into the creek's edge, fighting the current as he worked. His way toward the trapped stranger, the water was shockingly cold, fed by snowmelt from peaks that still wore white caps despite the advancing season. "Hold on!" Sam shouted over the water's roar, though he wasn't sure the man could hear him. Above the sound of rushing water and grinding rocks, "I'm coming to help you!" The rescue that followed tested every skill Sam had learned during 3 years of solitary mountain living. Using techniques his uncle had taught him for handling difficult situations in dangerous terrain, he managed to get close enough to throw the rope to the drowning man while maintaining his own footing on the slippery rocks. "Grab the rope and hold tight," Sam called out, his young voice cracking with the strain of making himself heard. "I'm going to pull you toward shore, but you have to help by kicking your feet." The stranger's response revealed both his desperation and his trust in Sam's competence. Despite his obvious exhaustion, he managed to secure the rope around his chest and began fighting his way toward the bank with Sam's determined assistance. The rescue took nearly 20 minutes of dangerous work, in freezing water that could have killed both of them if Sam had made a single miscalculation. But eventually, he succeeded in pulling the stranger to safety on a gravel bar where they both collapsed, gasping and shivering from cold and exhaustion. "Son, you saved my life," the man said when he had recovered enough breath to speak. "I don't know how to thank you for risking yourself for a stranger." Sam studied his unexpected guest as they both recovered from their ordeal. The man appeared to be in his 40s, with graying hair and clothes that, despite being soaked and torn, showed quality that suggested wealth and position. His boots were expensive, his watch was gold, and his manner carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "What's your name, and what were you doing in the creek?" Sam asked with the direct curiosity that characterized his approach to new situations. "I'm Marcus Thornfield," the man replied, extending his hand with formal courtesy that seemed incongruous given their bedraggled condition. "I was riding through this area when my horse spooked at a rattlesnake and threw me into the water upstream. The current carried me faster than I could swim to shore." Sam shook the offered hand, noting the soft skin that suggested this man wasn't accustomed to physical labor, despite his obvious strength and determination. "I'm Sam McKenna. I live in the cabin just over that ridge. You're welcome to come warm up and dry out while you figure out what to do about your horse." Marcus Thornfield's gratitude was evident as he accepted Sam's invitation, though the boy noticed he seemed to be studying his surroundings with more than casual interest. As they walked toward the cabin, Marcus asked questions about the area, the local population, and Sam's living situation with the kind of systematic curiosity that suggested more than polite conversation. "You live alone up here, Sam?" Marcus asked as they approached the modest log cabin that Sam called home. "That's quite an accomplishment for someone your age. How long have you been managing on your own?" 3 years since my uncle died," Sam replied, unconsciously straightening with pride at the recognition of his independence. "He taught me everything I needed to know about mountain living before he passed. I hunt, trap, grow vegetables, and trade with occasional travelers for supplies. I can't make or find myself." Marcus's interest in Sam's self-sufficiency seemed to go beyond mere admiration for youthful capability. He asked detailed questions about the boy's daily routines, his knowledge of the surrounding terrain, and his interactions with other people in the area. "Do you get many visitors up here?" Marcus inquired as Sam prepared dry clothes and began building up the fire to warm their chilled bodies. "A few prospectors and hunters pass through during the warmer months," Sam replied, finding dry clothes that would fit his guest. "Most folks avoid this area because it's remote and the terrain is challenging. I like it that way. Fewer people means fewer complications." As Marcus changed into dry clothes, Sam prepared a simple meal of venison stew and biscuits, demonstrating the domestic skills that had enabled him to survive independently in one of Colorado's most challenging environments. His competence impressed Marcus, who seemed to be evaluating more than just the boy's hospitality. "Sam, I have to ask you something important," Marcus said as they shared the meal. "When you saw me in that creek, what made you risk your life to help a complete stranger? Most people would have been too afraid or too cautious to attempt such a dangerous rescue." The question revealed more about Marcus than about Sam, suggesting that the man's life experience had taught him to expect self-interest rather than selfless courage from others. Sam's answer was characteristically direct. "Uncle taught me that. When someone needs help and you're able to provide it, you don't waste time calculating risks and rewards. You do what's right and deal with consequences afterward." Marcus studied Sam's earnest face with growing intensity, as if seeing something that exceeded his expectations. "Your uncle sounds like he was a wise man. What else did he teach you about life and dealing with people?" Over the course of the afternoon, as Marcus's clothes dried and his strength returned, Sam shared stories about his uncle's teachings and his own experiences of mountain survival. His natural intelligence and mature outlook clearly impressed his guest, who seemed to be forming conclusions about the boy's character and potential. "Sam, I need to tell you something that might change how you feel about helping me," Marcus said, as evening approached and he prepared to leave. "I'm not just a traveler who got thrown from his horse. I'm Marcus Thornfield, and I own one of the largest cattle ranches in Colorado Territory." The revelation explained Marcus's expensive clothes and educated manner, but it didn't change Sam's opinion of him as a person who had needed help and deserved rescue, regardless of his social status or wealth. "That doesn't matter to me," Sam replied honestly. "Rich or poor, you were drowning in that creek, and it was the right thing to pull you out." Marcus's response revealed that Sam's attitude toward wealth and status was exactly what he had been hoping to find. "Sam, I'd like to make you an offer. My ranch needs someone with your skills and character. How would you feel about leaving this mountain and coming to work for me?" The offer was both generous and appealing, representing security and opportunity that Sam's isolated life couldn't provide. But it also meant abandoning the independence he had fought to maintain and trusting his future to a man he had known for less than a day. "Mr. Thornfield, I appreciate the offer, but I'd need to think about such a big change," Sam replied carefully. "This cabin and this life are all I've known since Uncle died. It would be hard to leave." Marcus's understanding of Sam's hesitation seemed genuine. "Of course, it's a major decision, but Sam, you have abilities and character that could take you far beyond what this mountain can offer. I'd like you to at least consider the possibilities." As Marcus prepared to leave, Having located his horse downstream and recovered his belongings, he gave Sam a final piece of advice that would prove prophetic. "Sam, what you did today, risking your life for a stranger without thought of reward, that kind of courage and moral character is rare, but it also attracts attention, both good and bad. Be careful who you trust, and remember that sometimes helping others can bring complications you didn't expect." After Marcus rode away toward his ranch, Sam reflected on the day's events and the unexpected offer he had received. Saving a drowning man had seemed like simple human decency, but it had opened possibilities he had never imagined and raised questions about his future that he wasn't sure how to answer. What Sam couldn't have known was that his rescue of Marcus Thornfield had indeed attracted attention of the kind that would transform his quiet mountain existence into something far more complex and dangerous. The man he had saved was more than just a wealthy rancher. He was someone whose gratitude would bring both opportunity and threat into Sam's carefully ordered life. As night fell over the mountain cabin, Sam went to sleep unaware that riders were already being dispatched to learn more about the boy who had risked everything to save a stranger, and that by morning his isolated home would be surrounded by men whose intentions were far from clear. Sam McKenna woke before dawn to the sound that had kept him alive during 3 years of solitary mountain living. The subtle wrongness that indicated his carefully ordered world had been disturbed by unwelcome visitors. Through his cabin window, he could see the silhouettes of mounted men positioned around his property, their presence suggesting surveillance rather than casual travel. Counting at least 8 riders stationed at strategic points that would prevent escape in any direction, Sam felt his pulse quicken as he realized that his rescue of Marcus Thornfield had brought consequences he hadn't anticipated. The men appeared to be professionals, positioned with military precision that suggested they were accustomed to such operations. "Sam McKenna!" called a voice from the darkness, carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "Come, out with your hands visible. We need to discuss yesterday's events with you." Sam's mind raced as he considered his options. The remote location that had provided security during his years of independence now worked against him, eliminating any possibility of help from neighbors or law enforcement. Whatever these men wanted, he would have to face it alone. "I'm coming out," Sam replied, pulling on his boots and jacket while keeping his movements slow and non-threatening. "But I want to know who you are and what you want before we have any discussion." The man who stepped forward as Sam emerged from his cabin was tall and lean, with the weathered appearance of someone who spent his life outdoors. His clothes were practical rather than fancy, but his bearing suggested authority, and his companion's deference confirmed his leadership role. "I'm Jake Morrison, foreman for the Circle T Ranch," the man announced, his hand resting casually on his gun butt. "We're here to discuss your interaction with Mr. Marcus Thornfield yesterday afternoon." Sam felt a chill of apprehension as he realized these men worked for the man he had rescued, though their presence suggested gratitude was not their primary motivation. "Mr. Thornfield seemed grateful for my help when he left here yesterday. Why would that require an armed visit at dawn?" Morrison's smile was cold and calculating. "Boy, when someone saves the life of Marcus Thornfield, that creates complications that go beyond simple gratitude. Mr. Thornfield is a very important man with enemies who would pay well for information about his movements and vulnerabilities." The implication was clear and insulting. These men suspected that Sam's rescue had been motivated by something other than simple human decency, that he might have been working with potential enemies who wanted to harm or exploit Marcus Thornfield. "You think I'm some kind of criminal who was planning to rob or harm Mr. Thornfield?" Sam asked, his voice sharpening with anger at the unjust accusation. "I risked my life to pull him from that creek because he was drowning, not because I had some scheme to hurt him." Maybe, Morrison acknowledged without conviction. But a 15-year-old boy living alone in the mountains, conveniently positioned near a creek where Mr. Thornfield just happened to fall in, that raises questions that need answers. Another rider stepped forward, this one younger than Morrison, but with the same hard-eyed suspicion that suggested violence was never far from their minds. "Kid, we know you've been living up here for 3 years without much contact with civilization. How do we know you haven't been working with road agents or rustlers who wanted inside information about wealthy travelers?" Sam's anger flared at accusations that attacked not just his motives, but his uncle's memory and the values he had been taught. "Because if I was working with criminals, I would have let Mr. Thornfield drown and taken his horse and belongings rather than risking my life to save him." The logic of Sam's response seemed to give Morrison pause, but his suspicion remained evident. Maybe the plan was to rescue him and gain his trust, so you could learn about his ranch operations and security arrangements. Maybe saving him was just the first step in a larger scheme. "Or maybe," Sam replied with the direct honesty that had characterized all his dealings with Marcus Thornfield, "I saw a man drowning and did what any decent person would do. Not everything has to be a conspiracy or a scheme." Morrison's continued skepticism revealed how little trust existed in his world, where genuine altruism was so rare that it seemed suspicious. "Boy, in my experience, people don't risk their lives for strangers unless they expect something in return. What did you expect to gain from saving Mr. Thornfield?" "Nothing," Sam replied simply. "My uncle taught me that helping people in need is what you do because it's right, not because you expect rewards or recognition." The mention of Sam's uncle prompted questions about his background and family history that revealed how thoroughly these men had prepared for their visit. They knew about his parents' deaths, his uncle's guardianship, and his 3 years of independent living, with details that could only have been obtained through systematic investigation. "We know your uncle was Robert McKenna, a prospector who never struck it rich but had a reputation for honesty," Morrison continued. "We also know you've had minimal contact with other people since he died, that isolation could make you vulnerable to manipulation by the wrong kind of people." Sam began to understand that he was being evaluated not just as a potential threat, but as a possible asset. These men were trying to determine whether his rescue of their boss had been genuine altruism or the opening move in some larger game, but they were also assessing whether he might be useful to their operations. "Mr. Morrison, what exactly do you want from me?" Sam asked with the directness that had served him well during his years of mountain survival. "If you think I'm a criminal, arrest me. If you think I'm a threat to Mr. Thornfield, warn him to stay away from me, but stop questioning my motives for doing what any decent person would have done." Morrison exchanged glances with his companions before responding with information that revealed the true complexity of Sam's situation. "Boy, Marcus Thornfield isn't just a wealthy rancher. He's been working with territorial authorities to stop a gang of rustlers and road agents who have been operating in this area for months." The revelation put Sam's rescue in an entirely different context. If Marcus Thornfield was involved in law enforcement activities, then his presence in the area might not have been coincidental, and Sam's heroic actions had inadvertently placed him in the middle of dangerous criminal investigations. "Are you saying Mr. Thornfield was here as part of some kind of law enforcement operation?" Sam asked, his mind racing to understand the implications of what he was learning. "We're saying that Mr. Thornfield's activities make him a target for people who don't want their criminal enterprises disrupted," Morrison replied, "and anyone who helps him, even unintentionally, might become a target too." The warning contained both threat and protection. Sam was being told that his heroic act had marked him as potentially valuable to criminals who might try to use him against Marcus Thornfield, but also that Thornfield's organization was prepared to protect him if necessary. "What does that mean for me?" Sam asked, though he suspected the answer would involve changes to his independent mountain lifestyle that he might not welcome. Morrison's response confirmed Sam's fears about losing his autonomy. "It means you can't stay up here alone anymore. Boy, you're either going to come work for Mr. Thornfield where we can keep an eye on you, or you're going to have to relocate somewhere far from this area where criminals can't find you." The ultimatum was presented as protection, but Sam understood it was also coercion. His choice to help a drowning stranger had eliminated his option of remaining neutral in conflicts he had never wanted to join. "And if I refuse both options?" Sam asked, testing the boundaries of his situation. Morrison's answer was blunt and final. "Then you'll be on your own against people who kill for a living, and we won't be able to help you when they come looking for ways to hurt Mr. Thornfield, through anyone who might have earned his gratitude." As the sun climbed higher and the surrounding riders maintained their positions, Sam realized that his simple act of human decency had transformed him from an independent mountain dweller into a person whose choices were being dictated by forces beyond his control. The irony wasn't lost on him. Saving a man's life had potentially cost him his own freedom to live as he chose. But as he looked at the faces of the men surrounding his cabin, Sam also understood that his uncle's teachings about helping others had prepared him for exactly this kind of moral challenge. "Mr. Morrison," Sam said, with the quiet courage that had enabled him to risk his life for a stranger, "I'll come work for Mr. Thornfield, but not because you're forcing me to. I'll come because if he's really fighting against criminals, then helping him is the right thing to do." Morrison's surprise at Sam's response revealed how little he had expected genuine moral motivation from someone he had been treating as either a threat or a pawn. "You're willing to leave all this behind to help fight people you've never met?" "I'm willing to leave this behind because my uncle taught me that when you see someone doing right fighting against people doing wrong, you help them," Sam replied. "Mr. Thornfield was willing to risk himself to stop criminals. The least I can do is risk my comfortable isolation to help him." How will Sam adapt to life on a working ranch while helping fight dangerous criminals? What new threats will test his courage and loyalty? Subscribe to our channel to witness the incredible transformation of a mountain boy into a key player in the fight for justice. The autumn of 1885 found Sam McKenna fully integrated into the operations of Marcus Thornfield's Circle T Ranch, where his mountain survival skills and natural courage had made him an invaluable asset in the ongoing fight against the criminal gang that had been terrorizing the Colorado Territory. What had begun as a simple rescue from a flooding creek had evolved into a partnership that was reshaping both Sam's life and the region's approach to frontier justice. "Sam, we've received intelligence that the Garrett gang is planning a major operation that could affect every ranch and mining claim in this valley," Marcus announced during their morning briefing in the ranch house study. "Your knowledge of the mountain terrain and tracking abilities make you crucial to stopping them before they can implement whatever they're planning." Sam studied the maps and reports spread across Marcus's desk, his 16-year-old mind processing tactical information with the maturity that 6 months of dangerous work had forced upon him. The shy mountain boy who had lived in isolation was becoming a confident young man whose insights often proved more valuable than those of experienced lawmen. Based on these movement patterns, it looks like they're planning to establish a base, a camp somewhere in the high country where they can store stolen goods and coordinate attacks on valley settlements, Sam observed, his finger tracing possible routes through terrain he knew intimately. Marcus nodded with satisfaction at Sam's analysis. The decision to bring the boy into their operations had been controversial among territorial authorities who questioned the wisdom of involving someone so young in dangerous law enforcement work. But Sam's contributions had repeatedly proven invaluable. Sheriff Bradley and his deputies know the roads and towns, but they're lost once criminals head into mountain country, Marcus explained. Your ability to track them through terrain where others can't follow has already prevented 3 major robberies and helped us recover thousands of dollars worth of stolen property. The transformation in Sam's life had been remarkable to witness. The isolated mountain dweller had adapted quickly to ranch life, while his unique skills had earned respect from cowboys and lawmen who had initially doubted his capabilities. But the greatest change was in his understanding of his place in the larger community and his responsibility to use his abilities for more than just personal survival. Mr. Thornfield, I've been thinking about something that might help us get ahead of the Garrett gang instead of just reacting to their attacks, Sam said, consulting his own handwritten notes about criminal movement patterns. What if we could predict their next target and be waiting for them instead of always tracking them after the fact? Marcus looked up from his paperwork with the sharp attention Sam had learned to recognize when his ideas captured the ranchers. Interest? What do you have in mind? Sam's proposal revealed strategic thinking that impressed even experienced law enforcement officials. The gang has been hitting isolated targets, small ranches, prospectors, travelers, because they assumed no one could coordinate a response across such large distances. But what if we created a communication network that could warn potential targets and coordinate pursuit efforts? The plan Sam outlined was ambitious and innovative. A system of signal fires and mounted messengers that could alert scattered settlements to criminal activity and enable coordinated responses that would make the gang's hit-and-run tactics ineffective. It would require cooperation from ranchers and mining operations throughout the territory, Sam continued, his enthusiasm growing as he developed the concept. But if everyone participated, we could make this area too dangerous for organized criminal activity. Marcus's response revealed how completely his opinion of Sam had evolved since their first meeting at Willow Creek. Sam, what you're proposing is essentially a civilian militia coordinated through a comprehensive intelligence network. That's the kind of strategic thinking that territorial governors pay consultants hundreds of dollars to develop. The implementation of Sam's communication system over the following weeks proved even more successful than anyone had anticipated. Ranch hands and miners who had previously felt helpless against organized criminals now had ways to warn neighbors and coordinate defensive efforts that made robbery attempts increasingly dangerous for the perpetrators. The Garrett gang has lost 4 men in the past month trying to attack targets that were prepared for them, reported Sheriff Bradley during one of their coordination meetings. Word is spreading that this territory isn't the easy pickings it used to be, but success had also attracted the kind of attention that Sam's uncle had warned him about during those long-ago lessons about the consequences of making enemies. The gang's leadership had identified the communication network as the primary threat to their operations, and they had begun targeting its key organizers for elimination. Sam, we've received word that there's a bounty on your head, Marcus announced, grimly during what would prove to be a crucial conversation about the boy's future. The gang knows you're the architect of the network that's been disrupting their operations, and they've put a price on you that will attract every bounty hunter and hired gun in the territory. The news was sobering but not entirely surprising. Sam had understood from the beginning that his involvement in law enforcement activities would involve personal risk, and he had accepted those dangers as the price of doing what his uncle had and taught him was right. How much are they offering? Sam asked, with the practical curiosity that characterized his approach to threatening situations. $5,000, dead or alive, Marcus replied, his voice heavy with concern for the young man who had become like a son to him. That's enough money to attract professional killers who won't care about your age or the justice of your cause. The bounty represented both recognition of Sam's importance to their anti-criminal efforts and confirmation that he could never return to his former life of peaceful mountain isolation. The boy who had rescued a drowning stranger had become a marked man whose survival depended on the continued success of the forces of law and order he had chosen to support. "Mr. Thornfield, I knew this might happen when I agreed to help you." Sam replied with mature acceptance of consequences he had understood from the beginning. "My uncle taught me that doing right sometimes means accepting danger, and that running from your responsibilities doesn't make you safer, just less worthy of respect." Marcus's response revealed the depth of affection and admiration he had developed for the young man who had saved his life and then dedicated himself to helping others. "Sam, you've already contributed more to law and order in this territory than most men accomplish in entire careers. No one would think less of you if you decided to relocate somewhere safe until this situation resolves itself." But Sam's answer reflected values that had been shaped by 3 years of independence and 6 months of fighting for justice alongside people he had grown to respect and care about. "Sir, these criminals aren't just threatening me, they're threatening everyone who lives and works in this territory. Running away might keep me safe temporarily, but it would mean abandoning the people who depend on our network to protect them." The crisis that would test Sam's resolve and define his future came when intelligence reports indicated that the Garrett gang was planning a coordinated attack on the ranches and settlements that formed the core of their communication network. The criminals had apparently decided that destroying the infrastructure Sam had created was worth the risk of a major confrontation with territorial authorities. "They're planning to hit 5 locations simultaneously," Sheriff Bradley reported, during an emergency meeting of law enforcement officials and civilian coordinators. "If they succeed, they'll eliminate our ability to coordinate responses and return this territory to the chaos that allowed them to operate freely." Sam's analysis of the planned attacks revealed tactical understanding that impressed even the military officers who'd been called in to assist with the response. "They're counting on our forces being spread too thin to defend all 5 targets effectively. But what if we concentrate our defense on the most important location and use the others as traps to capture gang members?" The strategy Sam proposed was risky but brilliant, deliberately allowing 4 of the attacks to proceed with minimal resistance while concentrating overwhelming force at the 5th target, which happened to be Marcus Thornfield's Circle T ranch. The plan would sacrifice some property and equipment to capture gang members who could provide intelligence about their organization's leadership and future plans. "It means using ourselves as bait," Marcus observed, understanding immediately what Sam was suggesting. "We'd be gambling that we can capture enough gang members to break up their organization before they can inflict serious damage on the other targets." "Yes, sir," Sam confirmed, his young face showing determination that had been forged through months of dangerous work. "But it's the best chance we have to end this threat permanently, rather than just containing it temporarily." The battle that followed became legendary throughout Colorado Territory as the moment when organized crime met its match in the form of coordinated civilian resistance, guided by innovative tactics and superior knowledge of local terrain. Sam's network functioned flawlessly, providing real-time intelligence about gang movements while coordinating defensive efforts that turned what should have been easy targets into deadly traps for the attackers. When the smoke cleared, 14 gang members had been captured, including 2 of the organization's leaders, while the remaining criminals fled the territory permanently. "Son, what you've accomplished here will be studied by law enforcement agencies throughout the West," Territorial Marshal William Hayes told Sam during the ceremony recognizing his contributions to frontier justice. "Your communication network and tactical innovations have proven that organized crime can be defeated by organized communities working together." But perhaps the most significant recognition came from Marcus Thornfield himself, who had watched Sam transform from a mountain boy into a leader whose courage and intelligence had changed the course of frontier development. "Sam, when you pulled me from that creek, you saved more than just my life," Marcus said during a private conversation as they planned Sam's future. "You saved the vision of what this territory could become when good people work together against those who would exploit and terrorize others." As Sam prepared to begin his formal education in law and territorial administration, his heroic service having earned him admission to institutions that would prepare him for leadership roles in the developing West, he reflected on the journey that had begun with a simple act of human decency. "Mr. Thornfield, my uncle taught me that helping others was just something you do because it's right," Sam said, as they watched the sunset from the ranch house porch. "I never imagined that pulling one man from a creek would lead to helping an entire territory find peace and security." Marcus's response came from the heart of a man who had learned that sometimes the most important partnerships begin with the smallest acts of courage. "Sam, heroes aren't made by the magnitude of their first brave act, but by their willingness to keep doing what's right even when the stakes get higher. You've proven that a boy with the courage to save a stranger has the character to save an entire community." From mountain hermit to territorial hero, Sam's incredible journey proves that one act of courage can change not just individual lives, but entire communities. His choice to rescue a drowning stranger set in motion events that transformed frontier, justice, and created legacies that would protect countless others. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories of everyday heroism that grows into extraordinary leadership and the amazing power of doing what's right, regardless of personal cost.